I just love this. Like, I don't know what else to say. When I tell y'all how excited I was when I got this book, oh boy, is this a spicy book. I believe it's part of the banned books list now, so if you're interested in reading more banned books, here we go. Hello friends, welcome back. My name is Speedy for those of you who are new here. I have my Pedialyte right here, my water right here. The lighting is not the best, but we're gonna work with this. I was supposed to record this yesterday when we had good lighting, but I got some minor food poisoning and was out of commission for the whole day. So here we are, hydrating because I'm still really dehydrated. That's enough about my health. I swear I'm not always sick. It is finally time to review and wrap up the books that I read for February. Oh boy, do I have quite a review for you all. Without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump right into our statistics. So in total, I read 9 books this month, 1 novella, 2 romances, 2 classics, 2 romantasy/fantasy, 2 thrillers. I read a total of 3,537 pages. So per usual, notes on my iPad. We started off the month strong with a novella, How the King of Elfame Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is part of the Era Folk series, also known as the Cruel Prince series. This is such an amazing book. It's all in Carden's perspective. You kind of get more of his history and how he became who he is, as well as kind of go along with like a little bit post everything that happened in the Folk of Air series. That's essentially the gist of it, right? I'm not going to summarize too much because I just did. And hold on, like there's beautiful, like such absolutely beautiful pictures on here. Let me show you all my favorite one. Like, do y'all see this? Isn't this gorgeous? Absolutely beautiful. It's a novella. It's all about Carden. I just love this. Like, I don't know what else to say. I loved this novella. I loved this book. Holly Black and her form of writing is so whimsical and poetic, and it just sucks you in. I love her writing. She's honestly, I think, one of my favorite authors now that I'm like thinking about it. I absolutely love the series. I love the novella. I can't stop saying love. So can y'all guess what my rating is? I rated this a 5 out of 5. Fell in love with this, and it was such a quick, easy read. Just read it. Just read it. If you already read the Folk of Air series and you've been wanting to read this but you just haven't picked it up, do it. Do it. Loved it. So after that, I picked up A Blind Date with the Book, which was Adelaide by Genevieve Wheeler. I was expecting this to be a cute romance book, especially because it's categorized as like contemporary romance. It's not essentially a happy romance book. So this book follows the story of Adelaide, a 20-something-year-old American living in London, and she goes on this date with this one guy she met online called Rory, and they just had such great chemistry, and it kind of just tells a story of Adelaide falling in love and going through turmoils of being in love and heartbreak and stuff like that. She has trauma, she has baggage that she has to work through, and so does Rory. It's definitely a love story, but it's not a happy love story because it is one-sided love and it is hard and it's hurting both of them. It doesn't romanticize it, but it also doesn't end bad. It does end with like a bit of a hopeful note, kind of just showing that things could get better. The relationship is toxic and some of the actions that they make don't make sense, but it makes sense for the story because these characters are so humanly flawed. They're not perfect. They have to work through things, and it just felt realistic and frustrating, and overall it was just really sad to read sometimes. There's definitely some trigger warnings in here that you should look at. The writing was beautiful, poetic. The way the storytelling went about it, it was very, very beautiful writing. And even though the story was about heartbreak and unrequited love, it was still a very impactful book to read. I actually enjoyed it and was really in my feels and was really sad, and I really liked the hopeful note at the end too. So overall, I'm going to rate Adelaide a 4.5 out of 5. Instead of choosing something easy and simple to read, I had to pick up a book that I had at home because I had not gotten my books for the month yet and went for challenging. I picked up Dr. Zhivago by Boris Pasternak. This is Russian literature that was translated into English. Fun fact, when it first came out, it actually was not published in Russia, and it took many years to actually finally get a first publishing in Russia. Hold on, my dog's like literally chewing on his stick right behind me. So a quick summary, the story follows Yuri Zhivago, who lost his mother as a child and later on his father, and eventually moved in with his uncle. And throughout his whole life, he was constantly fighting this side of him, this creative side of him, and instead decided to pursue medicine. Eventually, he marries his wife, Tonia. Immediately once his first child is born, he's called to the front to work as a doctor in a camp during World War II. There he meets Lara, who he once saw as a child. So basically the story just follows Zhivago trying to live his life, trying to lead a normal life during war times. I simplified this book so much. It was definitely an interesting book to read. First off, I want to say this writing is absolutely beautiful. Oh my god, there are so many ways to describe just the most mundane things and make it sound so poetic and romanticized, and it's just amazing. I will also agree that releasing this book was very brave of Pasternak. Like, yeah, I can see why this was not released. I understood Pasternak's message of trying to live a normal routine life during times of war and uncertainty. Like, morals are heavily skewed because of survival. It's just a really unstable time. But I do feel like Lara was actually the star of the show. I don't know, something about the book, it just felt like we were constantly trying to excuse Yuri's actions. I looked it up, and this may have been due to Pasternak's own personal affair that he had during that time. So it could have been just a way of him relating to Yuri, since there is a lot of similarities between Yuri and Pasternak. But like I said, I did enjoy the book. I really enjoyed the poems at the end, Yuri's poems at the end. They were really beautiful. I just overall really enjoyed the writing. It made me feel more inspired to read classics. I also really like that emphasis of conflict between Yuri's passion and just trying to be logical about things, because Yuri's creative, but he was going this medical route to be stable. It made sense. I liked it. I liked this book. It was, however, really hard to read. So the audiobook really helped me just kind of navigate through it, especially because the names and the nicknames were just a lot sometimes. But if you're trying to get into Russian literature, this one was pretty good. So overall, I'm going to rate this a 4 out of 5. My first classic of the year, I already can check off that goal from my list. So after that, I still decided,
hey, you know what? I want to read a fantasy now.
And I picked up Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. When I tell y'all how excited I was when I got this book, I was so freaking excited to finally get my hands on this book. Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. This is the third book in the Empyrean series, also known as the Fourth Wing series. Without spoiling too much, because it is the third book, this book picks up exactly where Everflame ends. Violet has learned a bunch of new things and she's trying to find solutions for these things. And that is as much of a summary I can give, because I will literally spoil almost the entire series if I try to summarize this anymore. If you do want a more in-detailed review, shameless plug, go watch my Empyrean series reading vlog that I did. I go in detail about the whole series in general, and it's a very long video. I put a lot of work into it, but it also has spoilers and I talk more about my actual thoughts and opinions. So my thoughts about Onyx Storm. Like I said, I was so very excited when I received this book and I wanted to love it. I wanted it to be my favorite book of the year. I just had high hopes, which is on me. I should have not had such high expectations because my expectations weren't met. I feel like this book had to play a lot of catch up when it came to world building because of the lack of world building I've mentioned in the previous two books. I still felt like the overarching plot is unclear. I understand kind of the direction it's gonna go next for the next book, but overall plot, I'm still kind of like,
what is the goal here?
This book also felt like a repeat of Everflame. I don't know if anyone else felt that, except thankfully this one's shorter. I've mentioned this before, but I feel like when it comes to romantasies, if romance is going to be the main focus of the story, then you should put a little bit extra work on the romance. And I feel like this is supposed to be a romantasy, but I feel like there wasn't much chemistry and there wasn't that much growth. And I think it's also because there hasn't been too much character growth in the past few books. Maybe because our characters are so stagnant, it doesn't feel like much of the romance was spilled on, but I'm not sure. Still love the dragons. Absolutely love the dragons. I will always want more dragon time. I think just to end this review on a positive note, Riddick, We love Riddick here. I think this book and this series has so much potential. It has such a unique idea. You could just do a lot with it. But I feel like since there's no clear direction, and by the third book you would think there would be more of a like, oh, okay, that's what it's trying to do. It's just hard to keep engaged. I do want to read what happens next because I just want my characters to have like a happy ending, especially on Darna. The ending was wild in the sense of like, I was kind of confused for a second. I think actually the ending was the reason why I kind of want to continue reading, because I'm just like, interesting. Overall, I'm going to rate this a 2.5 out of 5. As for Spice, I'm also going to rate it a 2.5 out of 5. Like I mentioned, if you want a more in-detail review, go and watch that video. So after that, I decided to avoid getting into a reading slump. I would pick up my blind date with the book, and this is The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I read this in my last reading vlog. If y'all want to go watch that, I swear this is just like a promotional video at this point. I'm sorry. I have to get y'all to go watch my videos somehow. Anyway, The Maidens is a murder mystery kind of thriller. So The Maidens follows the story of Mariana, who is a recent widow, gets a call from her niece Zoe. Basically, Zoe's freaking out because her friend has been missing, and they just discovered a body, which later out they do find out that it's her friend Tara who was missing. She just needs Mariana's support. Mariana decides to go over to Cambridge and just be there, be a support system for her niece. That's as much as I will say. This book definitely had captured my interest because of the Greek mythology. I felt like it was such an interesting way to like weave in Greek mythology into like a thriller slash murder mystery. The book is dark, not in a very like dark spooky kind of way with horror elements, more in a creepy kind of making you feel kind of you know? It was just uncomfortable. There were absolutely definitely times where I wanted to just shake Mariana and be like,
girl, you are not a detective. Stop it.
But I really did like the story. I like the thriller aspect of it all. I really enjoyed the Greek mythology of it all. It was just a good book overall. So I'm going to rate this a 4 out of 5. Quick, simple, easy read. And so then finally, I'm just like, I need a cute romance. So I picked up Deep End by Ali Hazelwood. And oh boy, is this a spicy book. This is Alice Hazelwood's latest release. Deep End follows the story of Scarlett, who is a college athlete, a diver in the swim team, in the women's swim team. Eventually, she meets Lucas, who is the captain of the swim team. She's met him before because he is dating the captain of the divers team, Penn, and they've just kind of been in the same like social circle, but she's never really interacted with him until this one day where she kind of steps in because Penn and Lucas are having an argument and it's getting heated, and she feels worried about Penn, and it turns out it was just kind of taken out of context. But Penn and Lucas break up due to differences that they have, but Penn kind of is just like,
hey, Lucas, Scarlett, y'all should hook up because you guys have the same interests.
Like literally, like that's kind of just how she went about it. Just because, you know, it's funny, I guess. I don't know. I really don't understand why. I guess I do, but at the same time I don't. And so Lucas and Scarlett are just constantly thrown into situations together at this point on. So I will say this, I am no kink expert. I don't know, okay? I feel like this book is definitely a bit of a better representation than like, let's say 50 Shades of Grey is what I've been comparing it to. I do think it's kind of like better, but I can't say if it's accurate. I can't say if they went in like a good, healthy route or whatnot. I find this story kind of funny. It is very Ali Hazelwood. It has the kind of stoic male kind of guy and the quirky girl. So like it's definitely very Ali Hazelwood. It's just a typical rom-com with a lot more spice in it. I swear every new release gets spicier and spicier, and I think this one just might be the spiciest yet. I will say that the romance aspect of it all was a little bit confusing. I feel like Lucas' feelings were eventually explained, and it kind of felt a little bit like a cop-out, but you know, that's just a personal opinion. But yeah, between Lucas and Penn's relationship and then Penn and just like all of that, it kind of just gave me a little bit of a ick, and I'm just like, no. That whole aspect, that love triangle that wasn't really a love triangle, was just not my thing, and that's just the me thing. But it was still a fun little rom-com book that I still really enjoyed. I'm going to be rating this a 3.5 out of 5, and as for Spice, a 3.5 maybe. Yeah, I don't know, it just definitely felt spicier. Like I said, not necessarily a smutty book, but a lot spicier than a typical romance book. So then after that, I finally picked up my in-person book club book because I had the meeting the week after. I picked up Spark of the Everflame by Cole. I actually was the one that recommended this book because it was in my TBR for the longest. And I just realized that the last book's not even out yet. I feel so bad for recommending it now because it's not a completed series. I'm sorry. Basically, the story follows DM, our main character, who lives in this fantasy world where you have your mortals who are like the low class people, and then you have your descendants who are descendants of the gods that came and colonized this world essentially. And the main world issue here is that descendants and mortals are not allowed to procreate because it kind of just ruins their powers and whatnot. DM is one day walking home when she stumbles across her mom having a conversation with a descendant, and she immediately gets sussed out and it's just like,
hey, my mom's been keeping a lot of secrets from me. This is another one. I'm finally gonna confront her about it.
Later that night, her mom actually never comes home and just disappears. It just follows the story of DM kind of trying to navigate this world full of secrets that her mom never exposed to her, basically. Fantasy, romantasy kind of book. I really enjoyed the first half of the book. I really love the world building. As I've mentioned so many times, world building is my thing. Character development and world building, yes, please. I really did enjoy the first half. It was a much slower pace, so it might not be for everyone, but I like just learning about the world, learning about where they're in and stuff like that. However, the second half gave a bit of main character syndrome from DM because she would do the most ridiculous things, and I'm just like, how did you get away with that? Like, no way would you have gotten away with that. It's just crazy. And then additionally, the pacing was kind of weird for the second half. It is a romantasy. The actual romance in it is kind of weird. I think it's going to be another love triangle situation. It's supposed to be a slow burn, but there were very few instances where I believe the end couple had very little scenes together. It made it a little bit more insta-lovey because of that, but it's the first book. It's definitely a starter of the series. You could tell that they're just setting up for the series. So I'm really excited to see what the rest of the book is. The ending, wow. I was expecting something to that extent, but I was not expecting that specific ending. It definitely threw me off, and I almost immediately read the second book and I stopped myself because I wanted the physical copy. So I'm just like, okay,
just breathe, because the other books are not out and you're gonna hate yourself if you just binge read the series.
So yeah, no, I was definitely interested. It is a smaller fantasy book, which I enjoy. Overall, I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5. As for spice, it alluded to it and it was more of a fade to black moment, so I'm gonna say a 1 out of 5. So then after, I picked up The Crash by Frida McFadden on my Kindle, and this was another book club book. The Crash follows the story of Tegan, who is 8 months pregnant, is about to get a huge payday when kind of things just go south and she finds herself in the most terrible situation. That's all I'm going to say about that. So like I said, very, very Frida McFadden. Like, you could tell this is a Frida McFadden book. It was an easy read, it was short, it was fast, it kept you engaged. This one, however, just did not do it for me. I was not a fan. I did like Tegan's drive to get out of the situation she was in, but I don't know. I don't know if it was the writing. I don't know if it was the ending. It might have been the ending. The plot twist was kind of just like out of nowhere. I also feel like it has very hard topics to talk about, and when you're villainizing the person with those hard topics, you can definitely offend some people. And I don't know if Frida McFadden was trying not to offend people. As per usual, definitely look at trigger warnings for any triggers that this book might have. Overall, I'm gonna give this a 2.5 out of 5. Not my favorite Frida McFadden for sure. Now, hopefully I can get through this last review because my camera's overheating. Last book I picked up, and I actually finished this one in March, but I read most of it in February. That is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This story, if you have not seen the show is great. The book is freaking awesome. So this story takes place in like a dystopian US world called Gilead, and basically it just is about a story. Our main character Offred, who is living in this world that kind of reverted back to what it used to be, where women have absolutely no rights. They're also living through a world where fertility issues are huge. If there are children being born, they're being born with like genetic mutations and stuff like that. Some of them are stillborn. So as I was saying, basically it's a totalitarian regime where the few women that are fertile are basically these enslaved handmaids that are forced to have children for other families to be able to keep procreating. It is a really hard story to read considering political times right now. It's very scary because of a lot of parallels that we are going through, and it's kind of sad. This book was written and I believe released in like 1985 or something like that. There is a second book to it. There's a sequel that got released in 2019. Overall, what do I think about this book? Aside from it being a hard read, it was a really good book. This is the kind of stuff that I would eat up when I was in my like dystopian phase back in high school. Like, I can't believe I didn't read this sooner. The way it ends, now that there's a sequel, I don't know how I would have felt just knowing that there was only one book. I feel like the reason why I like this book so much is because our main character, Offred, is not a typical heroine. Like, she is scared. She doesn't know what to do. She's conforming, and she's okay with conforming because that's the only way for her to survive the situation that she's in, because she doesn't know anything else to do. I just feel like it's a very realistic situation in that sense, where like a lot of us, I feel like, would say, yeah, we would fight the government, we would do this, we would do that, but in reality, like, would we? I don't know. It was just a very interesting perspective. It's not very like action based or anything like that. It's very political, obviously. It was just a really interesting book. I believe it's part of the banned books list now, so if you're interested in reading more banned books, here we go. The Handmaid's Tale. Very, very good read. Overall, I'm going to rate this book a 5 out of 5. Jeez, was this a good book. I think I do want to read The Testaments, which is, like I said, the sequel that came out like years later. But anyway, that is a wrap up of February. All of the books that I read for February are right here. In total, I read 8 books. It was such a good month for books. I got 2 5 stars. I read 2 classics, not 1 but 2. So I'm doing great on my reading goal. You know, like, I wanted to read 1 to 2 classics this year, and I already completed that reading goal. I'm so happy. Oh, you know what? I don't usually review mangas, but just a quick shout out to A Sign of Affection Volume 3. I did read this right after The Handmaid's Tale because I needed something cheerful. But I think that's it. If you read any of these books, please let me know down in the comments below if you have any recommendations. I will take any recommendations, any kind of book. I will read it. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't done so and you would like to, please subscribe. I make book content, and now and then I make some vlogs. But thank y'all so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, and I will see y'all next time. Bye bye.